Let me ask you something. Why did you pick one outfit over, say, another? Was it because of the comfort, the style, the story you wanted to project when you walked into the room? Or think about your favorite sports team. Why did you root for them? Why do you root for them? Is it because of a particular player, the players as a collective, the city, or the feeling of being a part of something bigger, whether you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, Steeler Nation, Georgia Bulldogs? So here's the thing though, those choices, they're not random. They're connected to deeper factors. And once you see it in your clothes, your sports teams, even in ads you click on, you'll start to see it in your politics too. And what I mean by that is think about an ad that grabbed your attention while, say, another ad didn't even register at all. Somebody studied you, they targeted you, they knew how to pull you in. So here's a bigger question. If marketers can shape your choices, what happens when lawmakers and entire political systems start shaping not just what you buy, but what you believe about fairness, equality, and who belongs? So right now, say for instance, DEIA, or diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility initiatives, are being rolled back in workplaces, in schools, and in government programs. And DEIA doesn't give something, contrary to what many people think, to people that are not deserving. What it does is it expands the merit pool. Well, at least it does for those of us that are not legacy based or predominantly of that predominant geographic demographic, which is typically your white people or your white males specifically. And so here's why that matters. According to the ACLU, the DEIA principles were built to ensure fairness. They were built to ensure representation and opportunity for everybody. So diversity makes sure that institutions reflect the communities that they serve, whether that's across race, gender, disability, class, military status, or rural or urban status, stuff like that. And equity is supposed to recognize that barriers do exist, and they are supposed to work to dismantle those barriers that existed. And then of course you have access, inclusion, and then make sure that people who are intentionally excluded historically, that we can fully participate without fear of bias. And then accessibility, that removes any physical, technological, or any systemic barriers that would stop someone from partaking in whatever type of space or society that is. And so these ideas, they didn't just appear out of thin air. They grew out of things like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and American with Disabilities Act. So these policies were meant to stop discrimination and expand rights to people who didn't always have them. And so over time, DEIA became the way to put wrongs that were created because of, discriminatory practices, to put those to bed, so to speak. And so if you say, well, DEIA is always, typically people always think DEIA is, black folks or some type of minority, but DEIA is women. It's the neurodivergent. It's the wheelchair-bound person, no matter what their race or gender is. It's the person that's hearing impaired. It's the white man that grew up in Appalachia, like the current sitting VP, who has a different set of lived experiences. It's the military, those of us that served in the military that are integrating now back into society. It's the foreign-born students who are here, not just to enrich their lives, but to enrich ours. It's the foreign-born, the immigrants who are here with different lived experiences that are here to enrich our tapestry. So when these initiatives are dismantled, the simple question is, okay, why? Who benefits and who doesn't? Who's the proponents behind these erasures? Like, why are you doing this and why now? So at Spiced Bronz, when I always talk about, representing us, I also have what we try to do, what we say the final why. And this lets you use it on any policy headline, any whatever it is. And so if we look at DEIA, for instance, we're looking for clarity. And so that looks like, you're saying to yourself, okay, what is the current state with DEIA being present? Okay, what is your desired state? Is there going to be a transition state in between those two? And if there is, what is it? What are you trying to gravitate to? And why are you moving from wherever you are? Who's behind it? Who are the stakeholders? Why are you doing that and why now? And then when you're talking about the cause effect, you're saying, what brought this on? And so in spaces like project management and, problem solving, you're looking at, say, like the Ichikawa diagram, or some people call it as the fishbone diagram. You're looking for causal links so that you can mitigate or come up with practices and, different policies to help you to navigate that. All right, so you're saying, okay, what is a cause? Why was DEIA needed? Is it still needed? Who is it benefiting? Who is it not benefiting? Whose voices are lost? What opportunities are lost? What safety is lost? What accesses are lost? Should we get rid of these programs? And why are we doing this? These are the types of frameworks that I would hope people are gravitating to. So when you want to dialogue with someone who's really interested in engaging, you're asking better questions. And then you're saying stuff like, well, how does it look to someone who's already been excluded? How does it look to someone who's never been excluded? Is there a gap between the two? And if it is, what is it? And how do you close that gap, even if you wanted to? Or maybe you don't want to. And so the final why looks at stuff like that. It looks like the bigger picture, and it try to figure out, like, what's happening, why is it happening, and who's driving that change, whether it's a good change or bad change. Does it reinforce a certain type of system that, in this case, would be white supremacy? To roll it back, because that's what it seems like to me is happening. Does it terminate something? Like, what is going on? And then you have to say, at least for me, I always, you go back to historically, why are these erasures constantly happening across history? What is the pattern? Who are the originators of these erasures? And typically it's the same type of colonizer. And if you're being honest, you will look at these questions and you'll start to say, okay, here is where we are, here's where we're going, and here's what I can see. And so at this point, you're trying to reach what I would consider clarity. And clarity is power, right? And so the part that I think some people miss is some people will hear you and some won't. Some will care, some will just say, well, I'm not affected by it. And the way to reach people who are willing to be reached isn't by shouting, but it's about asking better questions and listening. And so questions like, who benefits from DEIA rollbacks, the gutting of affirmative action? If you look at your workplace, is it becoming more inclusive or less inclusive? And how does this affect not just the active employees, but the community at large? And if there's a problem, what is it? Questions don't argue. They plant seeds, and even in silence, they grow, right? And so you got those people who say stuff like, well, I don't do politics. Yeah, I hear you, but when I hear you say that, here's what I also hear. Either you're saying you are safe enough to ignore policies, or you have the privilege of not being directly harmed by them, or, even a combination of the two. But politics isn't just debates on television. It isn't one party or another. Policies decide whether a child eats at school. It decides whether or not we're staying hooked up with Israel as they continue to commit the genocide in Gaza. It helps you to determine whether or not history will be told in its full accounting, how a particular district will be funded for its school. It decides whether workplaces will have protection from discriminatory behavior, or if it's going to be just a safe environment all around. It determines whether or not your grandmother is going to be able to get long-term care, or if that only remaining hospital in your area is going to stay open. That's politics. So when you say I don't do politics, what you're really saying is I can afford not to care. And that's a privilege that many of us, especially Black folks, we don't have, because our survival has always been political. We've always had to fight for every little bit of our humanity. And my challenge to you is to not stop at headlines or viral clips, but, don't let your anger overwhelm you, but to use a framework that allows you to be more critical, allows you to engage people who are willing to engage honestly and effectively. You can use it on, current spaces, policies, practices, whatever you want to use it on. You can use that type of framework where you're being critical about stuff. Because once you see the final why, you stop being a consumer of somebody else's narrative, but you become the author of your own. And so over on my blog at Spiced Bronz blog, .blog, I have a worksheet, and it's in the description. But what it does is it try to give you kind of a template to work off of, and you don't necessarily have to use this, or you can add to it, you can take away, but it just try to give you an idea of how to go about, you know, forming better questions. And I would say go there after this video, and the whole point is to strengthen your lenses, sharpen your questions, protect your future, protect your peace. All right, so I will see you over at the blog. Until then, stay safe, stay dialed in.